Hello, it's John Heaton. Today I'm going to have a go at doing my top 10 Beatles solo albums. Hard enough doing 10, couldn't really go further. Well, I could, but I had a hard enough job picking 10. And these are mainly my personal favourites, but I've also tried to be a little bit objective in some cases and applied the Martian theory. You know, what would a Martian think if he was handed a bunch of music? Now, obviously, in an exercise like this, there's classic albums I've left out by necessity. And what I would say is, there's no solo album for me without redeeming features. They all have their moments, some more than others. But, I was listening to New the other day and enjoyed at least half of that. And I was even listening to the Russian album the other day and enjoyed maybe getting on for half of that. So I go back to all the albums, even the obscure ones, even the ones which are not very well thought of, and I always come back to them. So don't be offended if your favourite album is not in the top 10. It doesn't mean I don't listen to it, and it doesn't mean I don't love it. Just want a couple of honourable mentions here. Wings Over America. It's a sublime live album, captures Wings at their peak commercially in their 76 tour. It's a triple album set, and it's for the most part, Wings material and the Beatles material is kept under wraps to an extent, unlike the recent tours of McCartney. And then the other one I wanted to give a mention to, I did a review of Time Takes Time from Ringo, which is also brilliant. But this album is also an underlooked gem and a really well suited style to Ringo's voice. This country album from 1970. This I think is a 5-star album, and I wish Ringo would do another country album to this day. He should be doing that. You're not going to agree with all of the list, but you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to mine. So we'll start off with number 10. From George, his 1973 classic, his devotional album, Living in the Material World. And this is an underlooked album because it's somewhat overshadowed by All Things Must Pass, but melodically it's absolutely beautiful, and it contains some brilliant guitar playing. And the standard of songwriting is more or less, in my opinion, on the same level as All Things Must Pass. So it's hidden gems such as Give Me Love, the title, the single, and the light that has lighted the world. Number 9, we have John's Imagine, 1971 classic. This shows John at his melodic, mellow best for the most part, with some angry moments thrown in. Particular favourites would include, I'm doing a separate review on this album actually, so you can watch that one if you want to see my views in detail, but it is a magnificent album. And the number 8, this might surprise you, I'm going to put Back to the Egg. People have spent, how long has it been, 35 years slagging off this album, and I think it's about time it was rediscovered. And Paul's not in any hurry to put out the archive version, but this to me is the best example of Paul rocking out in his solo career. It unfortunately came out in the midst of punk, and so it kind of got lost in the mix, but I think with hindsight this album is actually a lot better than people thought it was at the time, and I think my kids have really got into it, and I think it's a classic. What are we, number 7? Ringo's 73 self-titled album. Just a really happy, uplifting album. If you want something to cheer you up, this is the one. It's got brilliant contributions from John, George, and Paul, as well as Harry Nilsson and Mark Bolan, Richard Perry producing. Number 6, John 74 classic, Walls and Bridges. He was separated from Yoko at the time, but he put out this pained piece of brilliance, right from the opening track, Going Down on Love, through to the closer, Nobody Knows You, Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out, and then raucous rockers like What You Got in the middle, beautiful ballads, number 9, Dream, Pretty tortuous songs like Scared, brilliant musicianship, and it's really up there with John's very best work. Number 5, my personal favourite from Paul, London Town, 1978, another very underlooked classic from him, in my opinion. From the brilliant title track, Cafe on the Left Bank, the single with a little luck, the ballad I'm Carrying is one of my all-time favourites. Even George Harrison called that track sensational. And Denny Lane contributes 2 brilliant songs with Paul doing superb backing vocals. So this is Paul at his whimsical, laid-back best, in my opinion, and recorded in the Virgin Islands appropriately. Number 4, we have George's classic first solo album, All Things Must Pass, and this is just a masterpiece for the most part, I would say, for the most part, because the first 4 sides are pretty much genius, and then the last disc is a dismissible apple jam, and that's probably the reason this album doesn't feature higher, because of that 3rd disc. But the first 4 discs, we're talking 80% brilliance. Right from the opening track, I'd Have You Any Time, to the ballad, Behind That Locked Door, another superb ballad, Beware of Darkness, Apple Scruffs, just chock-a-block full of classic stuff. Number 3, I'm going to put Paul's Band on the Run, which I've recently got back into after years of being a little bit, maybe hearing it too often or hearing some of the tracks too often. But I think this, when it comes down to it, is Paul's best solo effort, or with Wings. It's just got such a confident air of escapism. Did a separate review. I've done separate reviews on all of this album if you want to, all these albums if you want to hear my more detailed opinions. Which brings us to the top 2. And interesting, the top 2 have something in common. Number 2 is George Harrison's self-titled album from 1979, which is a joyous, happy affair, 10 brilliant songs, brilliantly played by a superb band, Andy Newmark, Willie Weeks, Steve Winwood on keyboards, and George's melodies really shine through on this album, and I think of it as a summer album, although it was released sometime in February, I believe. But for 79, if it had appeared earlier in the decade, I think it would have been a huge hit, as it was, again, turning out like Back to the Egg in the midst of, coming out in the midst of punk, and commercially was not that successful, but I think it's aged brilliantly, and I think it's still an absolute classic. And the reason I was saying something in common with the top 2, because they're both self-titled albums. George Harrison, number 2, and then coming in at number 1 is John Lennon, Pastagona Band, the opening solo album from him, if you discount the avant-garde stuff, which I tend to do. So this album is just brave, honest, and exhilarating to listen to if you're in the right mood. He really bears his soul, he really bears the pain of his childhood and the pain of the Beatles breakup. And this album ranks alongside Abbey Road, it's that good. And if I was a Beatles fan in 1970, I wouldn't be too disappointed at Christmas having just bought John Lennon, Pastagona Band and All Things Must Pass, as well as Layla, Derek and the Dominoes. Not a bad Christmas, really. So, that was my top 10. Thank you for watching. See you next time.